Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Pereira. Conservative MPs have triggered a vote of no confidence in Theresa May, plunging the Brexit process into chaos as Tory colleagues indicated they no longer had faith in the Prime Minister to deliver the deal. Graham Brady, the chair of the parliamentary group of the Conservative Party in the UK House of Commons, has received at least 48 letters from Conservative MPs calling for a vote of no confidence in May. Under party rules, a consent is triggered if 15% of Conservative MPs write to the chair of the committee of Tory backbenchers. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyse the Brexit situation and its implications. Joining me on the programme today are Neeraj Srivastava, former ambassador, Sreeram Chaulia, Dean, Jindal School of International Affairs, and Sheetal Sharma, Assistant Professor, Centre for European Studies, JNU. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Let's talk about the vote of confidence first. Sreeram Chaulia, which way do you think that this vote is really going to go? What is Theresa May up against?
I think she's caught in the middle of a maelstrom, from all sides and being buffeted both within her party, also from the opposition Labour Party, which has been gaining ground electorally, and the general public. I think her major problem has been, as a politician, Prime Minister May has not been able to, develop a kind of core group of followers within her own party. And so, in a way, her style of communication, people say she's been very wooden and not very effective and, very aloof. And last year, she called for early elections, snap elections, and it was a big blunder where the Conservative Party almost lost it, but barely scraped through with a coalition and formed another government. So she's been seen as, ineffective as a politician. But I think what is going for her, and which is why she has survived for almost 2 years through this, very, very tumultuous and messy process, is because nobody else, it's like a poisoned chalice to pass it on. And if somebody else becomes the Prime Minister now, they have a mandate, the election they won or nearly lost, as I said, was in 2017. So until 2021-22, there are no general elections due as per the current parliament's makeup. So in other words, the new Prime Minister, if there is one that emerges, suppose she loses, I think will, inherit much of the mess. And it all, if you go back historically, it started with David Cameron because he made the first big blunder of calling for a referendum on something so sensitive as membership in the EU. It was not even required. He thought that he could outflank his opponents within the Conservative Party and he put the entire nation's fate on the chopping block. And now they're paying the price for it. I feel sympathetic to Theresa May because she's a principled woman. She's not power hungry. She's not desperate to somehow cling on, but she feels like she has been given a mandate that she must fulfill and that she's playing a historical role at a very critical juncture.
Right.
So I think she's not been able to convince a lot of the blocs within her party, and opinion polls are suggesting, that she has no confidence in the parliament as a whole. So, and she's hanging by a thin, wire with a unionist party from the Northern Ireland, which doesn't want some part of the agreement she has dealt with the Europeans. And I think even with the Europeans, they're fed up because the rest of the EU has painstakingly come to this kind of a deal with her for months and months and months of negotiations. And now all of this could be thrown out of the window. So the UK's credibility is at an all-time low. And
Absolutely.
Theresa May is simply a symbol of this decline and failure.
Let's look at another scenario. Sreeram Chaulia, and if Theresa May actually wins this vote, but it leaves her, weakened, it leaves her in a state where really she can't do much.
Yeah, already, as I said, when the botched snap election happened last year, she was already quite weakened. But as I said, she's there by default, she's like, the fall guy or the fall girl, if you'd like, because nobody else wants to shoulder the blame for the severe descent that the the UK is entering after exiting the EU. I think if you look at the economic situation, the British growth has stalled, the unpredictability about investments, a lot of major multinationals have pulled out of the UK because of the fear of losing access to the bigger European market. You look at, anxiety at the grassroots due to the austerity policies that the Conservatives have been implementing for last several years now. There's a housing crunch, there's debt. So if you look at all that, in a way, if you come down to the bottom, to the baseline, why is this whole tumult and division happening where almost 50% of the society, even now they say if there's a fresh referendum, for example, the opinion polls are saying it's going to be 51-49, it's going to be touch and go, one way or the other. Maybe a few more may want to remain than was the case last time. But whatever it is, it shows complete division of the society between essentially the haves and the have-nots. So in a way, you go down to the British politics, the leadership for last 1 decade since the Labour was defeated in 2010, the almost last 8 to 9 years, you see that what they have done is in the name of austerity and conservative ideology, what they have done is, massively disenfranchise and pauperize large sections of society. You see, there's a UN Human Rights rapporteur on extreme poverty who's visited Britain, and he's actually commenting about extreme poverty in a rich country like that. And that's a lot of it has to do with the austerity. So the pro-Brexit, the sentiment, if it is still there and if it's completely tearing apart that country, I will blame the especially Conservative Party politicians and their attachment to ideology, because that working class, the white working class who feel like they have been left behind and who are behind this right-wing populism, they remain angry. And that is a big threat to Theresa May. Theresa May has tried to position herself as a pragmatist. Okay, I'll try and manage all sections and come up with a compromise solution. I also have to appease the EU to some extent to get a good deal from them. But the problem is the anger is at the grassroots. And in a way, the austerity which Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour Party, is highlighting and actually is benefiting from it is, I think, going to be the wave of the future, because they will say that, whether there's Brexit or not, the poor remain in a highly disadvantaged position in the current dispensation. And as long as that is there, that groundswell of anger from a lot of people who feel they have been left out of globalization and who are being used to blame the EU, that is, I think, going to drive this process forward, possibly to a new general election, if not on 2021-22, maybe sooner. And I think Labour is, in a way, Corbyn is sitting out this whole storm. He has not taken a clear position, and they may be the likely beneficiaries. So we may see the end of an era of right-wing rule as a result of this Brexit mess.
All right. Closing comments now from all my guests on what does it mean really for India going forward.
Frank, I think we would, have preferred that UK remains part of the European Union. We have no official position on this, but certainly we would have rather liked that our access, because many of our companies are UK based, and from there they used to also access the continental market. We have large investments in the UK, and because of the old colonial and the Commonwealth connections, we will be looking forward willy-nilly to this a new arrangement after Brexit, whenever it happens, maybe March 2019, which is supposedly, if the Article 50, the current date stays, then we are looking at, if the UK remains part of a customs union with the EU, which is likely because of the Northern Ireland problem, the Irish backstop as it's called. If that is the case, then they cannot negotiate free trade agreements with other countries independently yet. And that's one of the reasons why the hardliners are against Theresa May right now and baying for her blood.
Right.
So for us, I think it will be important to look at economic bottom lines. We have a large immigrant community there, and we have to make sure that their rights are protected. Earlier, there used to be different status for EU citizens, non-EU citizens, permanent migrants. The UK has been a source of migrants from our country for a long time. So all these things will have to be factored in. Overall, I think the disruption to our businesses is significant, just as, a Canadian or a Brazilian business is facing trouble in the UK, and looking to now access the European market, same will happen to our. So there may be opportunities for other European countries from the continent to woo us. France has been trying to say, you come to us now and we will be the gateway to Europe, because the British are now closing. So overall, I think, for us, we are part of the Commonwealth. There's also an issue about Britain and India working together for leadership of the Commonwealth group. So Britain, when it is facing such an existential crisis like this, I think the worst since, the World War II, they will obviously have major implications for our relationship with not just Britain, but with the entire EU, and we'll have to look at alternatives.
As of now, India cannot do anything. India is just an observer. It cannot influence the outcome of this whole thing in any way.
But we can look out for our own interests and engage with the others.
Yes, we will. But once the situation becomes clearer, we will try and do the best possible thing. And in fact, this suggestion has come more from the British side now, because they are looking for allies. You know, they have been saying, okay, now we should have a free trade agreement with India, and so on and so forth. So in some senses, they may become softer towards India.
Okay.
You know.
Right.
That
But their hands remain tied. Theresa May cannot get full autonomy to negotiate with India or
Absolutely.
China. So that's the big dilemma.
In the fitness of things, the best would be that Theresa May continues, she wins the vote, and then she continues with the deal, tries to pacify both the extreme ends, those who want to and those who are not willing to, and then continues with the deal and remains close to EU as much as possible in order to avoid any kind of major trouble.
Right.
It's a kind
coming
of
in UK's way in the next 10 years.
threading the needle exercise, almost an impossible task. Really, as I said, we have empathy and sympathy for Theresa May, but maybe the game is up.
But some of them are very good at it also. You might not be, but many are. All right, on that note, then we'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's it from me. See you again next time.